Yeah, there we go. Hello, welcome to the Mark and Joe Show, and
We
it's
got a
all about
nostalgia show today.
nostalgia. We're going to talk 80s and 90s, you know, and what it was like growing up and being a kid in the 80s.
Man, I'll
So,
tell you,
me
growing
being
up,
50, though, I was a kid in the 70s as well. I do remember where I was when Elvis died in 77.
well,
But, man, when I went to high school in the 80s, oh my God.
well, see, that's the funny thing. You're only a year older than me.
We had some of the best music.
Oh God, yes.
We had some of the best. Oh, there was roller skating rinks everywhere.
Oh, hell yeah.
Drive-in movie
can't find those
theaters everywhere.
There's like, I think there's a
let's
total
see.
of 3 here in
Arcades.
this state.
Arcades. There's almost 2 or 3 arcades on every block.
Yep.
Man.
Our era, we produced the best movies. Our era produced the best.
We had some of the best
music.
fun.
Our era, and that was another thing. In our era, we could go out and go do whatever we damn well pleased, damn near anywhere,
And not
worry about somebody grabbing us off the street or not
or
worrying
killing
about,
us because they want to shoot at us or something,
Yeah.
or they just want to go off on it, or
See, I lived
I
in
had
the
to take
country.
I had to take my daughter to the same high school I graduated from. Okay? Now walking into this school almost 20 years later, okay, literally, because the daughter I had that went to the same school I did, she's 22 right now. Okay? So when I took her there, I'm thinking, I graduated from the school. Yeah, my name's on the Hall of Fame because I graduated there like everybody else as they graduated there. But the thing that was different about that school is they had police, security. They even had a bank in the school now.
Oh,
The
yeah,
kids
I
could
know.
use.
I remember them building that damn thing.
And they had cops there all the time. Why? Why? I don't get it.
It's
it shouldn't have to
because the
be
kids
that
of
way.
today- The kids of today don't have the respect that we did.
They all need to get Gibbs slapped, in my opinion. I love that move.
Gibbs slap.
You
Yep.
know, I mean,
I mean,
most of
shit,
these
man, we
kids
got
wouldn't
out
have
of hand.
survived in our day.
No, we got out of hand. We had to find our own
We got detention.
switches.
If we were in school, we
Yeah.
got some hardcore detention,
We-
and we had some hardcore teachers that would sit there and make sure you didn't speak and didn't move one bit.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, but this was
I
also
got forced into a Christian academy for.
This was also the time that, if you spanked your child, you weren't going to get threatened with child
you weren't gonna
abuse.
get threatened with child abuse or go to jail.
Man, my mom.
Man, you could in our times when we were growing up and you misbehaved in the store, Mom could grab you
Backhand
you right there.
Oh, you bet
knock
she
you
would.
flat in your ass, and
My
not
mom-
one person would fucking turn their head and look
No, they would
to
have
make sure you're okay.
No, they would have looked at the mother and said, "Yep,
Yep, they deserved
you
it.
deserved it." That's exactly what would have happened
Yeah,
too. I've
exactly.
seen it firsthand because my mom, I love her to death. She was my best friend in the world. God rest her soul. But when my brother and I were raised, we were a handful. I mean, you got a single mom raising 2 boys, and we didn't get along as kids, like boys, don't get along sometimes. So we fought a lot. So my mom had her hands full. She backhanded us, and she did a lot more than that. I tell you what,
Yep.
we got hit with some pretty harsh things. And you think about it today, and it's like, man, if my kids had to live in that time era, they would have hated me a lot more than they hate me now.
Yeah, they would have grew up more like you too. They would have had.
And that would have
more
been a good
respect.
thing.
They would have
Because
more
a lot of
respect.
these kids don't have, here's what a lot of these kids don't have nowadays. They don't have morals, they don't have family values, and they don't have respect for their
No,
elders.
They don't.
My
daughter does though.
My dad beat those things into me so bad that I had this fight, this god-awful fight with this woman over custody. And she wasn't even the kid's mother, okay? And she came over to my house to try to talk to me, and this woman was so evil, and I hated her so bad. And because she was an old lady, she fell in the snow because she decided to walk through the yard instead of up the driveway and up the sidewalk. I could have left her sitting there. But no, because I was learned to respect my morals, I got her up.
Respect your elders.
Respect my elders. I got her up, and I walked her back to her car and made sure she was safe. And I did this in my pajamas, no coat, and it was the middle of winter and probably below zero for Wisconsin weather. You know, and I even had slippers on with no socks, you know. But I wasn't going to leave her laying in the snow, even though this little tiny voice was sitting on my shoulder. Do it. Just leave it. Just turn your back and walk away. Do it now. I wanted to so bad, but I couldn't have because of the way I was raised. And, you know, I tried to be nice, try to be a friend to my kids or something like that, and somewhere along the line, I failed them.
You didn't fail them.
But,
you didn't fail them, the system failed them because the system took the ability away from you to take and punish them when they went and did bad.
You know, most I could do was yell to my kids. You know, I was also raised never to hit a woman. And that's the other thing.
Put them in the corner. You gotta sit and face that corner because you're on timeout.
Back then,
I'm gonna count to 10.
Yeah, back then, so you could feel safe in the schools. Now these kids, you got all these gangbangers and all this other shit going on. There was drugs in school when I was going to school in the 80s. There was a lot of pot flying around. I was a fucking stoner. I'll admit it. You know, but I graduated honor roll.
You're still a stoner.
You know,
but that's the thing. You know, being a stoner doesn't mean you're stupid.
But back to the thing about the 80s and the 90s. I mean, we had some of the greatest movies. Breakfast Club.
Breakfast Club's one of the
Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
You know,
American Graffiti.
American Graffiti's a little older. That's like a 70s.
That was still a good one though.
You know,
that was still close enough to the 80s.
TV was great back then. We had, I mean, 1984 or 85. I'm not gonna. Don't quote me because I'm not exactly sure of the exact year, but MTV started.
Oh Christ, MTV was awesome when it first came out.
Back then,
that was the thing.
You had things called VJs.
VJs, video jockeys.
Pauly Shore was one.
Yeah,
believe it or not.
Got his start.
That's where he got his start. Was on MTV back in the 80s.
And then Canada did one called Much Music. And there's
Saturday Night Live was great back then.
Saturday Night Live was
Night Live was all-time best in the 70s.
I have to say though, Saturday Night Live now, the ones we got going now, looks like they're starting to embrace what they did in the 80s and 90s and kind of bring it back. Well,
the 70s was the best though with those commercials. I mean, come on, some of those commercials you thought were real and they weren't, or the Pizza Pit commercials for around here when they did the pizza.
I wasn't around here during that time.
Or the
my first time
Mr.
here
Bill.
Was 93.
I mean, everybody knows Mr. Bill from the 70s ones. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And then you had the Gumby cartoon after that, you know, because Eddie Murphy made that one famous. But you had all these great shows, all this great music. You had things to do. Other than sit in front of a computer in your house.
There was a lot of vices for us. A lot of things for us to go do.
Man,
to have group activities with our friends. We had arcades we could go to and meet up at. We had roller rinks we could go and enjoy
after school,
our time
you got your homework done. How often were you stayed at home after that?
I didn't.
You bailed the minute you got your work done.
As soon as I got home,
got your homework
did my
done,
homework,
and you're out the door.
I was gone.
Yeah, until 9, 10 o'clock at night or whenever your curfew was.
It took me like 20, 30 minutes to do my homework.
And your parents wouldn't worry about you because back then nobody would fuck with anybody.
You were given a curfew.
You know, back then nobody fucked with anybody.
The thing is, though, if you broke your curfew, you didn't get grounded. You didn't get put in a corner for a timeout.
You got taken home. Oh, yeah?
you got
beat. Or you got taken home by the cops if you got caught.
Yeah.
And that could have been worse.
You lived in the city. I lived in the country. I grew up in the country. My parents had 20 acres of land.
I bounced all around.
Now, listen to this. My parents had 20 acres of land. My best friend was a quarter mile away. I went Well, actually,
see, then there's no curfew because then you got private property for all that.
Well, yeah, and then but there was a girl my age that I hung out with. It was right directly across the street from me.
Did you do it?
No. Wanted to. No, she'd always come over and we'd hang out and do things and shit, man. I had a swimming pool. I had a swing set. And I had the swing set right next to the swimming pool. You know what we'd do?
I could just imagine.
You know what we'd do? We'd swing on that swing set and dive into the pool off of the swings.
Yeah, how many times did you want to go skinny dipping with her?
Oh, plenty. But, you know, I mean, shit, man. I'd get on my bike and I had a bicycle and I'd be gone,
back then, man, I was into girls. Man, I had a girlfriend in high school.
I had a BB gun rifle.
Man,
and I could go anywhere I wanted to out there and shoot birds or shoot squirrels or cans or whatever.
My dad would take me deer hunting back then.
Yeah.
You know, but we had a lot of things to do. I remember, you know, living on private property and being out after curfew. I lived with my dad for a little while when I was about 12, 13 years old, and the city of Madison's got a curfew, 10 o'clock. You know, and that's if you're 16. If you're under that, it's like 9 or something like that. I used to like to fuck with the cops. I lived in this trailer court on the south side. And back then the cops couldn't come in there because it was private property unless they were called in there. So if they saw us hanging out after curfew, all we had to do was quickly run onto that property, anywhere into that trailer court, and they couldn't touch us. Boy, think about the fun we had.
Well, yeah, pissing them off.
You know, I mean, things like that, you know, it's bad.
Can't do it. No.
It's like back then. Back then, I could drive, as long as I was a certain age, I could drive a moped that had the pedals on it. Mm-hmm. You know, those old-fashioned mopeds in the 70s and 80s when they first came out. Yeah. You know, they had the bicycle pedals on it. I could ride one of those around without a license.
Oh, I know.
Huh. Guess what I found out quite a few years later? They changed the law. Mm-hmm. I think that was kind of stupid, too. I mean, you get somebody big enough on one of those things, you know, and they ain't going to go much more than 15 miles an hour. If that, you know. I mean, they can't go more than 35 with me on them, and I'm a toothpick.
The funny thing is, those things are, you know, they're a hybrid bicycle motorcycle, but
I got arrested for not having a license on one.
They're a lot heavier than a bicycle.
But I got arrested once for not having a license on one. How stupid was that?
Very. And
I wasn't even a block from home.
Very.
But I'm just saying, back then, I could take, if I had a moped, I could have went down the street, went to the store, and came back on it, and the cops wouldn't even fuck with me, even if they could see that I was a kid and no way I didn't have a license.
No.
You know, as long as that thing was legally registered to somebody and had license plates on it, and you know, headlights and everything worked, they weren't going to fuck with me. You know, but nowadays it's all this petty shit and all these little people. Oh, it's not politically correct or it's not morally right, so you can't do that no more, and we can't have this here no more. And you know, this sounds like a dictatorship. And wasn't this supposed to be a free country? And people
supposed to be a free country.
I mean, when you start dictating what you can and can't do, as long as you're not hurting anybody, who gives a fuck?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, back then we had so much freedom. Kids don't have that much freedom anymore.
No, they don't.
And they don't have the things we had.
Well, they don't have the vices and stuff that they could go and take.
Well, and that's why they're going and getting into more trouble too. I mean, granted,
but I do have
arcades
to say,
aren't going to fail.
My daughter actually turned out pretty damn good.
I mean, arcades aren't going to make it anymore because of all your video game systems.
Yeah, your video game systems took the place of the arcades pretty much.
Take away the nostalgia of the fucking things like the drive-in movie theaters because you want to put a car lot there instead. Come on, you know.
Yeah, movie theaters. I miss the drive-ins.
I miss the drive-ins big time.
Those were a lot of fun.
We're going to have to make a part 2 on this, so stay tuned for part 2.